Howdy folks, welcome back to Boondockery. Today I have something a little bit different for you. I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I decided I was just going to do it. Today I'm going to share with you a little bit of my local history and a place that I used to come to way long time ago when I was in high school. And if all goes well, it's going to result in a really unique overnight solo camp. Now, at the moment, I am standing at the location where a railroad trestle used to be. And now it is part of the Moonville Rail Trail system. Now, a long time ago, this railroad that goes from there over to there, that was the Marietta-Cincinnati Railroad back in the early 1800s, mid 1800s. And it later got bought out by the B&O Railroad and operated all the way up through, officially it operated up through the end of the 1960s. However, there were still trains that would run through the 70s, and it was a rare occasion, but they still did do that. Now, the site I'm standing in right now, like I said, it used to be a railroad trestle, and it was a very low railroad trestle. So the road that comes through here, there were very few vehicles that could actually make it underneath that trestle. They've built up the road here. There was a nice little dip, but every time it flooded, as you can see, this is lowland, and there's a creek that runs right over through there. Every time it flooded, it was impassable. And I would say 2 miles in that direction is the famous, or I should say infamous, Moonville Tunnel. And it's supposedly haunted by many, many spirits. I think officially there were 5 people that died either at the trestle of Moonville, which was really big and really long, or they actually died in the tunnel. And but where I'm interested in going is up this direction to another railroad tunnel called the King Hollow Tunnel, or it's also known as King's Tunnel, Mineral Tunnel, or King's Hitch Tunnel. So we're going to take a little walk right up through there, but before we do, I want to show you a little bit about the history here. And one of the things that still remains after they removed the trestle was there was a drainage tunnel that went through, and it was big enough to where you know, there could be other types of traffic that goes through, your livestock, things like that. But we're going to look at this. Now, everything's covered with graffiti, but then again, what isn't? But as you can see, it's a fairly decent size underpass here. And the thing that's still really cool about this is it has been, you know, renovated over the years. You can see concrete, but if you notice, the bottom is all hand-cut sandstone. And there is some carving in here. And this one here looks like it was John Hartle, DCS. And then the really good one is over here. And the date is 1895 with the initials WCC. We're going to go ahead and take a walk along the Moonville Rail Trail for a little bit, and once we get close to the tunnel, I'll go ahead and bring you back. It's a fairly short walk. I don't know, probably maybe a quarter of a mile. But Once we get up there, I'll show you around the tunnel, tell you a little bit more about it, and then I've got another surprise, and I'll show you that once we get through the tunnel. Okay, we're about 100 yards away from the tunnel now, and a long time ago, this area, during the mid-1800s, even prior to the early 1800s, this area was very well known for iron production, coal mining, and timber. And as you look around, I'm going to get over here where I can see this a little bit better. Now, right up there is a coal vein that's still in existence on a section of rock that they cut through in order to make the railroad. And coal mining back then, completely different critter than the way it is today. They literally found a vein and an exposed section of rock, and they started digging it. And as they removed the coal, they went further back, and went further back, and went further back. And then if they wanted to go sideways, they would put in timbers for support, and then they go sideways. But they literally are like caves. And but here we go. We'll walk up here so you can see it as I see it. Right now, I smell the creosote from the timbers that the tunnel is reinforced with. It's literally a tunnel blasted through the rock of that spur from the ridge that's over to our right, and they reinforced it. And I personally think this tunnel is far more interesting than its more famous cousin, the Moonville Tunnel. Now, if you do a little bit of a Google, you will find all kinds of information about the Moonville Tunnel. But this one has always been my favorite. When I was in high school, none of this was like this. We always used to go to Moonville Tunnel just to hang out. The Raccoon Creek went underneath the great big massive Moonville Tunnel trestle. And, believe it or not, it was like, 35 feet above the creek. There'd be guys jumping off of the top of the trestle into the creek. I never did that. Never quite that foolhardy or that crazy. But this tunnel, it never really got that much attention simply because of the trestle that was down there. There really wasn't any place to park at the old Moonville tunnel when, like I said, when I was in high school. You could park several vehicles very close to the trestle. We'd walk across the trestle into the tunnel area, and it was nasty. There was trash and garbage everywhere. But the one thing that was sort of interesting back then versus today, back then everything was still intact. It just wasn't in use. All the railroad ties were intact. The actual railroad track was intact. The trestles, all the bridges were intact. Along the railroad, there were telegraph poles that still had telegraph wire hanging on them with small little ceramic insulators, and beside those were old telephone poles with the glass insulators, and all of the fixtures and the hardware and equipment that the railroad used, like switch lights, things like that. All that stuff was still intact. But once they pulled up all the tracks and called it no more, all that stuff got removed and scrapped. And they also removed all of the trestles, which made it virtually impossible for most people to walk along what used to be the railroad tracks. But the folks that are responsible for the Moonville Rail Trail, they've worked diligently. They've got tons of grants and have been able to replace all of the old trestles with actual decent bridges. And this is actually a pretty cool thing. I've not walked the whole thing. Right now I think it's sitting at about 10 miles of trail. It's very heavily frequented by horse. You can ride your horse up through, you can ride bikes, no motor vehicles, you can hike it. But it's pretty cool. And it goes through areas of Vinton County that you cannot see any other way than by that trail. What we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and take a walk through the tunnel, and hopefully that little light on my GoPro will be bright enough so you can see some of the interesting details. This particular tunnel was built in 1855. Well, here we go. All of those timbers are 12 inches by 12 inches. And it's always reminded me of the world in awe of a coffin, just the way it's shaped. And of course there's graffiti. But I don't know where you can go these days without seeing graffiti. Now there are quite a few areas in the walls to where either the timbers have been torn out or they've just fallen away. To me, it looks like they've been cut away. But I have actually gotten up in there and have crawled the entire length of the tunnel. And it's pretty precarious, to say the least. And as a matter of fact, years ago when I used to geocache, there was a geocache hidden here. And I can see, I don't know exactly how well you're going to be able to see this with my light. We're going to go ahead and take a walk on through anyway. And the ground in here, I mean, it's moist, but it's not too bad. You can see in the distance there's some standing puddles. Yeah, let's look at some fallen timbers there, or a fallen timber. You get a look in here. You can see how all the reinforcements were put in the walls of the tunnel that they blasted through. There's some of the creosote still oozing out of the timbers. That looks like an old insulator there. And this tunnel is actually longer than the Moonville tunnel. There's just something about this tunnel that I connect with. The other one is very well constructed out of brick. Now, with as well as this has been made, this will probably be standing for a much longer time. I don't know exactly when it was refurbished, but I think it was in the 1950s. Don't know how well you can see it, but there's an absolutely huge swallow nest up there. And you can see another vein of coal exposed. And it's on both sides of the tunnel. But a lot of people made a good bit of money independently and through the coal mines. Okay, now the thing that I think is really cool about this area, and I had heard about it for years, but I could never find it. I never got enough information as to where this thing was. But one day I was exploring over through here. As a matter of fact, it was during COVID. You know, that thing that's supposed to be really evil and awful. Well, of course, we all had a lot of free time, and I made the most of it by exploring my wooded surroundings in Vinton County. And I always knew about this pond. I've seen this pond a lot. This is actually a beaver pond. And but when I was in high school, this was a swamp. It wasn't a pond. Now, you cannot see it from here. But in the winter you can, when all of the foliage has died away. But across that pond is a hermit's cave. Now, the term Hermit's Cave is what I was always told it was. But in reality, it's not really a cave like you know it. Now, in this area, there are rock formations everywhere, everywhere. So as you're driving down a road like this, I mean, it's absolutely nothing to see hundreds, if not thousands, of giant rocks. Well, this particular rock from the road looks just like any other great big rock. And this one is pretty much overgrown with vines and vegetation. And it's, I would say, 20 yards off the road. And of course, there's graffiti, but there's also a pretty cool carving. Now, I can't make out exactly what that says, but I believe it is J. Mac Deal. Can't make out that. Remembrance. $1850 something through 1870 maybe. It's hard to see, but this is it. It's just a great big old honking boulder. And we'll go around this little path. Now, in reality, this is probably known historically as the miner's cellar or the miner's barn or the miner's house under a rock. It's just a great big boulder. And supposedly this miner, which I will show you the mine in just a minute, he probably used this more as a store area than anything else. And I wouldn't doubt that the miner also used this as a temporary residence while he was building his farm, which his farm is adjacent to this boulder, which no longer stands in any way, shape, or form. I can't even find any foundations, nothing. It's right over through there. It's all completely overgrown, and his garden and everything else is probably well underwater by now. But this is it. As you can see, this would be perfect accommodations for a hermit. And seeing how it's so close to the road, it's virtually impossible to tell that there's anyone that lives here. I'm trying to turn off this light. There we go. Not blinded anymore. But anyway, that's where I'm going to sleep tonight. I'm going to go in and clean it up a little bit, of course. But right now, we're going to walk a little ways up the road, and I'm going to take you up to show you the mine. Back in the 1850s, this would have basically just been a road well enough traveled by horse and wagon, and probably just slightly more than a trail, probably a double wide trail. But right beside the road, there's a little gravel section. If you notice on the ground, there's coal everywhere. This is coal. And that's exactly what everyone around here wanted. If you could find a piece of property that had a coal vein on it, you could use it to heat your house. You could sell it to the iron manufacturers. You could sell it to your neighbors. You could sell it all over the place. But it was something you could use and make money with. Now, that doesn't look like much. But back when that mine was in its heyday, you would have been able to walk in this thing. I don't know how well you can see this. Peek in there as far as we can. But this is it. But this is very, very common for the types of coal mines that you find all over Vinton County in southeastern Ohio. They're everywhere. There's a road not too far away from here. It's called Big Four Hollow. And the reason it's called Big Four Hollow is because there were 4 really awesome coal mines there. They were deep and they yielded a lot of coal. So that road didn't exist before they found the mines. And once they found them, well, of course, you needed to have some way to get the coal out of there. But the miner's cellar rock, about 20 yards off the road, it's about 30 to 35. And they're probably maybe 35, 40 yards down the road from one another. Well, I'm back at the miner's cellar, and we're walking around the other way. As you can see, there's a path here, so it's well frequented. And down closer to the pond, there's a great big clearing to where the people that come in and fish the pond, they probably have a little campfire and stuff there just to enjoy their evening and their little escape. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get my pack, see what I can do about cleaning up. There's a few beer bottles and stuff like that in there I need to clean up, see what else I need to clean up out of there before I turn this into home for tonight. Earlier today I finished up a video on my Philby of repair and assembly, and I just more or less got the idea then. It's like, hey, I've already packed my bag, might as well go camping. And then this popped in my head and I said, what the hey, I'm going to do it. So this is very impromptu. We'll just hope that it turns out well tonight. Well, I got it cleaned up as well as it's going to get cleaned up. But if you remember what this place looked like before, it was completely littered with all kinds of rocks. So I got all the rocks that were consequential up, and I put them right over here against the wall. And the reason primarily I did that, therefore, dangerous insects and snakes won't be likely to be up underneath them, and I don't lose my footing on some of the larger ones that are, a little less stable. But I have a nice little area right there. I'm going to use that for my cooking because it's relatively flat. I propped it up on a couple other little rocks. I have some shelving here, and I brought some candles that I'm going to be putting up, so hopefully we'll be able to do some filming in here all along these areas here and all the way around and get it properly illuminated. But that's pretty much the way it's going to be. I'm going to go ahead and get my backpack and start laying things out. I'm probably going to put my bed right through there, pretty much against the wall, either that or up behind that rock just before I get ready to turn in. But I brought the USMC sleep mat, and hopefully it'll make me comfortable enough. It's mostly sand bottom and it's got a little bit of a contour. We will see. Hopefully I'll be able to get up off the ground tomorrow with my bad back. I'm just taking a little break from cleaning up the the Hermit's cave, and it's not quite high enough inside for me to stand straight up, so it was getting to my back. But I'm getting it cleaned up pretty good. Got all the trash out of there already. Just wanted to come out and take a look at the beaver pond, and it is absolutely booming with all kinds of flora and fauna. I don't know if you can see that real well, but that is a marshmallow. Not a marshmallow, but a marshmallow. There's a couple other plants here. I'll show those to you as I do a little panoramic. I'm going to do a little cross section through here. Again, this didn't used to be a beaver pond years ago. I remember it being sort of marshy and swampy years ago when I was in high school. And but this is definitely water that I would not want to have to mess with, because all the geese, the ducks, the beaver, all kinds of other things that are in here. You could still do it if you have decent water filtration system, water purification system. If you strain out the sediment and you boil it, no problem drinking it. But I didn't want to drink beaver pond water, so I brought a lot of extra with me. Now, as I'm panning through here, take a look at the surface of the water, because it really looks like Nessie has taken a vacation, because some of the, I guess you would call it, the wake of these fish that's swimming in here, or whatever's swimming in here, it's pretty impressive. I'm going to go ahead and get behind the camera, show you a look around, and then I got to get back to cleaning that cave. We'll start off right there. That is actually a beaver lodge. And pan back. A lot of algae around the edges. I'll take over here real quick, but without messing your eyes up. Let you see that beauty there. But there is. Whoa. Don't know if you could hear that or not, but that was a huge splash. Something jumped out of the water over there. I can see why folks come here to fish. Now, right straight across where we're looking right now is where I was earlier in the video pointing across to. Well, it is very hot and humid, and the cave, I think, is going to hold a lot of that humidity, but I'm going to go ahead and take you through and let you see what I've done, and this will pretty much be it for the night. There's going to be my bed area, and there's the kitchen dining room area, and this is storage. This is my Philby and my camera bag. But if you notice, around the cave, I have candles. And once it gets dark outside, I'm going to light those up, and hopefully it'll be sufficient for me to be able to do some filming inside here without the use of the headlamp that I jerry-rig to use on my tripod. And I don't know, it looks fairly cozy to me. I don't know about all of you, but this definitely has an Apocalypse Now vibe to me. Well, anyway, the sun's going down. I think it's ready to make some chow. Okay, tonight we're going to have corned beef and cabbage. And the corned beef I'm using is inspired by a hermit that may have lived here. And it was canned meat. And we just harvested cabbage out of our garden. So I figured that would be an appropriate thing to have. It's corned beef and cabbage. And this particular corned beef is absolutely fantastic. Believe it or not, I actually purchased this from Big Lots. and it is absolutely fantastic. I packed all of my other ingredients in my freeze-dried meal koozie with a cold pack. And I've got some butter, I've got some onions, and I've got some cabbage. I'm going to be using my gelled alcohol to prepare this evening's meal. I'm going to load this up. In my tests, I used 2 tablespoons, which is approximately that much. But I want to have a little longer effective burn time. So I'm going to probably use about 3 to 4 tablespoons. Move that all the way around so we have a good even burn. Good, like that. Now, I'm going to put a little pat of butter in there. Yeah, those freeze-dried meal koozies really work great. Look at that, all that butter. It's still, it's still solid. So I'm going to get a little pat of butter. Put that in the bottom of the pan. It's already starting to melt up pretty good. The butter is looking pretty good. I'm going to put a little onions in there. Just about there to thin. Don't want to overpower it. Now I'm going to put the cabbage in. Now it's going to look like a lot, but it's going to cook down quite a bit. Now while my cabbage continues to cook down, it's starting to get close. I'm going to go ahead and open up my can of corned beef. Now this is cooked down to probably well over half. It's looking really good. One thing you can tell when you're cooking cabbage, when it starts to getting really close to being fully cooked, it squeaks. And there was a popular 18th century dish called Bubbles and Squeaks, and that's cabbage and potatoes. I'm going to go ahead and add in my corned beef. Or at least half of it anyway. Might have the second half tomorrow for breakfast. This corned beef is absolutely fantastic. It is probably the leanest corned beef out of can that I have ever had, and without a doubt the meatiest. And you saw by the can that it's chunk style. And it is absolutely fantastic. Yeah, it started scorching just a little bit, so I poured in a little water. And I think that is going to be absolutely fantastic. Well, it's time to dig in. Now, traditional corned beef and cabbage is like one of my favorite meals. But to be able to have it when you're camping and be delicious, that's absolutely fantastic. I've had a lot of different types of canned corned beef in my life, and I think as far as slicing it, putting it on a sandwich, I mean, I think it's okay. But once you start cooking with it, it just turns to goo. I mean, this is like actual, you can actually see chunks of beef in this. And the flavor's absolutely fantastic. And adding that little bit of water, oh, that just helps the flavor spread around. Absolutely fantastic. Well, I'm going to go ahead and enjoy this, folks. And I'll see you in a bit. I'm not going to do that whole thing where I pretend to get into my sleeping bag and fall asleep and then get up, turn the camera off, and get back in again. I'm not doing that. But anyway, this is where I'm racked out for this evening. It feels pretty comfortable so far. And here in just a few minutes, I'm going to be calling it a night. So good night, folks. See you in the morning. God bless. Morning, folks. No. Rough night's sleep. It wasn't because of comfort. It was just really an odd sleeping situation. I went to bed between 10:30 to 11 o'clock, and I woke up 2 o'clock in the morning, and it was so loud outside this little rock shelter. I mean, the frogs, the insects, it was really, really, and then the coyotes started. And so I laid in there awake for at least 2 hours before I wound up, falling back asleep, and I wake back up and fall back to sleep, wake back up. So it wasn't the greatest night's sleep. As far as comfort goes, it wasn't bad. I mean, as far as sleeping on the floor of a cave, I mean, it was decent enough. I didn't get chilled. I pulled this shirt over top of me when I was laying on top of the sleeping bag, probably till maybe 3:30, 4, and my feet started getting a little chilled, so I slipped those into the toe of the sleeping bag. But that was it. I mean, I would have been perfectly fine with a whoopee, anything like that, as long as I had something soft to lay on. And so it wasn't bad at all. And as far as my attempt to film me cooking last night goes, I didn't remember, but I had hung my GoPro, which is black, on the adjustment knob of my tripod, and it seemed like everything I got in good position when I get around to get down and start filming again, unknowing to me, it would turn a little bit because the weight of the GoPro was pulling it back. So I don't know how well that's going to turn out or not, but the hey. And I was looking at my gelled fuel that I had made, and it's going to be a bit iffy if I'm able to finish up my breakfast this morning, be able to cook it. But I'm going to give it a shot anyway. I'm going to cook up a little hominy with bacon and onions, and we'll do that here in a few minutes once I get completely defogged. Had I put my earplugs in, I think I would have slept perfectly fine throughout the entire night, but I chose not to. And well, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to tidy up in there, put a few things in my rucksack, get those up out of the way, and then I'll go ahead and get to cooking. Okay, it's time for breakfast. I had some leftover gelled stuff that's still pasty from last night. I might have enough to accomplish this. I did a little guesstimation as far as what I would need for 2 meals that actually require a little bit of simmering and a little bit of time. So I think we're going to have enough to do it. And since this is all brand new to me, it's all experimentation, learning as we go. And we'll get that lit. Those freeze-dried meal koozies actually work fantastic in keeping things cold. I brought 2, and as of right now, this leftovers I had in the one last night still cool, and this one's still cold. I'll start off with getting some diced up bacon in there. And I had no idea what yesterday was going to bring, so I went ahead and pre-prepped everything. I went and diced everything up at home, and went from there. Get some onions in there. On the fire. I was very impressed with how everything went last night. I'm going to go ahead and let this simmer and let that bacon start to brown. This is onion saute, and we'll go on to the next step. Yeah, it's starting to look pretty good. The thing that's interesting about this cook set is that it's anodized aluminum, and that's it. There are no treatments whatsoever to it for non-stick. And so far, I haven't had any problem with it. Last night, my corned beef started scorched just a little bit, put a little bit of water in there, swished it around. There was no burnt marks on the bottom of the cook pan. So this is looking pretty good. Just another minute or 2, letting these brown up just a tiny little bit, and then I'll add the hominy. Okay, that looks good to me. My bacon I'm using is double smoked, thick sliced bacon. Have a little less than a 1/4 cup of onions in there. My hominy is from Bush's, and if you want to do this yourself, make certain that you rinse your hominy thoroughly, and you want to get all the starch off of those as you possibly can. I mean, every bit, because that starch will gum up and will actually start sticking to whatever pan you're using, even a non-stick pan, and it creates a squishy texture, and you want your hominy to be dry as far as the mouthfeel and stuff goes. So we'll go ahead and let that heat back up, and we'll probably be not too far away. There we go. Now we are getting a little sticking here, but I think that is from the onions. The sugars are separating out of the onions, and that is it. Now with hominy, you'll notice that the hominy will start to pop, and that's when you know that it's pretty much ready to go. And just a second ago I heard that occurring, and the heat was being trapped by having the lid on there.
I'm just going to let this go a minute or two more, and then it'll be ready to eat. I think I'll go ahead and put a little salt and pepper on there right now. I use Redmond's salt, and it's like Salt Plus. It has all kinds of other minerals in it other than just salt, and it's much healthier for you. It's completely 100% natural. It's not processed in any way, shape, or form other than the fact that it's taken out of the ground and put into packages. And there's a whole variety of Redmond salts available. They actually even produce an electrolyte drink that they use with their salt, and it is really good. It's a little unusual. It's not like the electrolyte drinks that are powder form you put into bottles of water, like Gatorade and a lot of the others. There's practically no sugar whatsoever in them, and but wow, I tell you what, on a good hot day, it is incredibly refreshing. Breakfast is served. And it just turned out that I had the perfect amount of my gelled alcohol fuel to prepare these two meals. And that's a very successful experiment on my part as far as portioning. So I know that one of those tubes will have basically 2 cooked meals in it, and I still have just a tiny little bit left. So that was pretty good. Yep. Bon appetit. That is fantastic. If you are completely in the dark, completely ignorant to hominy I like to have in place of like home fries, fried potatoes for breakfast. They aren't nearly as starchy, and actually, I mean, there are a lot more carbohydrates in it than there are in potatoes. And it just gives you a little more energy in the morning as opposed to making you feel real lethargic after a big old plate of home fries and bacon and things like that. Hominy is made from basically field corn, feed corn, and they soak it. Back in the day, they used to soak it in lye, and it would swell up, and that outer husk, that outer shell on the corn would separate. And you would, rinse it all off. You'd remove all of those little husks, and then you would dry out the inner, pulpy quality of the corn, and then you just boil it and prepare it any way you want. Also, if you dry out hominy, completely dry it out and grind it, that is grits. So if you like grits and you didn't know where grits came from, there's not a grit tree or a grit plant. This is where it comes from, just dried hominy that's ground. And I love it. I forget how long ago, probably, I think I discovered hominy back when I was probably junior high school. And after I had it, it's become a staple in our house, and we'll probably have this, if we have decent breakfasts, we'll probably have this at least half the times that we have any type of starchy thing compared to fried potatoes. But good fried potatoes with a little onion and some bacon grease is some dang good eating, I'm here to tell you. I'm gonna go ahead and finish this. Now, just a little soap and water. You can see that cleaned up really well. There was a lot of that burnt gunk from the onions right there. It was pretty thick. It cleaned up really, really well. I'm gonna go ahead and put some more hot water on and make myself a cup of Copico. And once I enjoy that, I'll start breaking down camp and packing the ruck and heading out.
I'm all packed up, ready to go. I just want you to see the condition of the cave. And it is in much better shape than it was when I found it. I cleaned up all the candle stuff, cleaned up all the trash. I'm going to pack that out with me. And other than the graffiti, which I can't really do much about, I mean, it looks like a pretty nice little spot for a hermit to live for a good long time. I sat down this morning to edit this video, and when I got to my sign off, I saw that my footage was completely unusable. So I had to drive back out to reshoot it. And that's okay, I love this area. As far as a spur of the moment decision, this was a very unique wild camp. I was able to cook some decent food and spend the night in an environment that I am completely not used to. Hopefully you enjoyed it too. Well, folks, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.